She was young, stunning, and a dreamer. He was a titan, owner of an incalculable fortune, and 59 years her senior. When they announced their marriage, whispers were inevitable. It's just another union of convenience. Little did they know that behind the sparkle of that veil and the ostentation of the garments nestled a secret so dark that not even the bride would dare to imagine it. Everything followed the script of luxury and convenience, an impeccable ceremony, a millionaire party, flashes everywhere. The apparent perfection wove an illusion. But the true Iron Curtain only opened on the fateful wedding night. Far from curious eyes and false smiles, what was supposed to be the pinnacle of consummation turned into something unimaginable. This story will not just surprise you, it will dismantle every expectation you dare to build. The young woman and the sheik, an unusual encounter. Linda never imagined her life would change so much after that trip. She was a simple girl from a small town, accustomed to quiet routines, coffees with friends, and afternoons at the university library. At 21, her eyes held a mix of innocence and curiosity, always dreaming of the future, but without grand material ambitions. What she truly wanted was to live a great story. It was during a cultural excursion to the United Arab Emirates that everything began. Linda had been selected for a university exchange program, a dream trip, flights, accommodation, and tours paid for, a chance to see a new world. Little did she know that, in that setting of golden sand, mirrored skyscrapers, and ancient traditions, fate was about to surprise her. During a reception dinner at a luxurious hotel in Dubai, Linda could barely believe what she saw. Golden chandeliers, waiters who spoke 4 languages, and a city view that looked more like a postcard. But it was at the end of the night that something caught her attention. A man in traditional clothing, surrounded by discreet security guards, was looking fixedly at her. He was different from the others. Older, yes, much older, but there was something in his demeanor that blended authority, mystery, and a strange gentleness. She tried to look away, but he had already approached. Politely, he asked simple questions, praised her smile, her posture, her way of speaking. Embarrassed, she replied with respect and curiosity. She wasn't sure who he was until one of the organizers whispered in her ear, "That's Sheikh Hassan Al-Masri, one of the most influential men in the region." Linda was speechless. It was as if she had been transported to an ancient tale, where the king observes the commoner and sees something in her that no one else does. In the following days, the sheikh sent flowers, handwritten letters, invitations to discreet lunches. Contrary to what one might imagine, he was never invasive or aggressive. He seemed more interested in listening than in impressing. He spoke of poetry, of travels, of how time teaches us to value what is essential. What was supposed to be just an exchange trip turned into something completely unexpected. In less than a week, Linda was enchanted, not by the luxuries nor by the promises, but by the way that man seemed to see her beyond her appearance. He said she was different from the women he had known, that there was a rare light in her, a truth he hadn't seen in years. Of course, many people around them began to suspect. Such a young girl, involved with an 80-year-old man, a billionaire, full of power. It seemed like something out of a soap opera, or a scandal waiting to happen. But for her, it wasn't about that. Linda felt there was a genuine connection there, something she couldn't even explain. When the sheikh proposed marriage on a terrace at dusk, Linda hesitated for a few seconds. She thought of her family, her friends, the internet that would descend like an avalanche of judgment. But then she looked into his eyes and for the first time felt she was in front of someone who could protect her, not with money, but with presence, with attention, with care. She said yes. Not out of ambition nor for status. She said yes because she believed, even if just for an instant, that there was love there. Little did she know that yes would open the doors to a wedding night that would change everything, a marriage proposal that divided opinions. When Linda returned to Brazil, her heart still seemed tethered to the east. Even with the time difference throwing off her days, something stronger was unsettling her. Sheikh Hassan's messages. Every day, without fail, he made her smile, sometimes with kind words, sometimes with handwritten poems, translated by his assistants, but with a warmth that overflowed with sincerity. Gradually, what seemed like a fleeting enchantment turned into something deeper and more serious. After a month, the invitation came. Hassan wanted to see her again, but this time as a personal guest. She hesitated. It was a big decision, going far beyond a second trip. It involved feelings, reputation, and her own safety. Still, she went. Because deep down, she felt she needed to live it to the end, whatever that end might be. On her second visit, Linda was received like royalty. She had her own room, dresses chosen by local stylists, banquets prepared especially to please her palate. But unlike what one might imagine, there were no exaggerations or forced ostentation. Hassan treated her with respect and lightness. They talked for hours, walked through the gardens, watched the desert at sunset. It was as if he took her to a world where time moved slowly, where she was heard, seen, and cared for. It was during a particularly quiet night under the desert stars that the proposal happened. No extravagant rings, no audience, just the two of them. He held her hands, looked into her already tear-filled eyes, and asked in a firm voice, "Linda, would you agree to be my wife?" For a few seconds, the world seemed to stop. She felt her heart race, the words vanish, the air become lighter, or heavier, she couldn't tell. It wasn't just a proposal. It was a life choice, a complete change of direction. And then, with her eyes still shining, she responded with a whisper, "Yes." But her yes echoed far beyond that desert. As soon as the news spread, opinions surged like storm waves. Close friends were in shock. Some tried to hide their surprise, others were direct. "He could be your grandfather, Linda. Are you sure you're not being manipulated? This isn't love, it's self-interest, on both sides." Social media, which had previously celebrated her trip, now divided between cruel criticism and conspiracy theories. Some said she was selling herself. Others called her a gold digger. There were those who created memes, jokes, and even videos questioning her morality. It was as if the whole world had become her life's judge, without knowing her feelings, her truth, her doubts. Her family also didn't react well. Her mother cried for days. Her father remained silent, just shaking his head, like someone trying to understand something that seemed impossible to him. Her siblings called her to talk, suggesting she rethink, that she shouldn't make impulsive decisions. But Linda was firm. It wasn't blindness, nor stubbornness. It was a quiet certainty that by Hassan's side, she felt more valued than ever. Not for jewels, not for trips, but for the way he treated her. With respect, with patience, with a kindness she rarely found in people her own age. She knew she would face sideways glances, mean comments, and even rejection. But she preferred that to living a half-life full of what-ifs. And so, even with the world against her, Linda followed her heart. Little did she imagine that the true scandal wasn't in the marriage, but in the wedding night that would follow. Love or interest? The doubt that haunted the couple. Ever since the engagement was announced, Linda lived under a spotlight she never asked for. In every social media post, The comments repeated like an annoying echo. She's with him for the money. This is a scam. Just wait, soon she'll disappear with his fortune. And worst of all, these words came even from people she considered friends. Hassan, on the other hand, seemed immune to this type of judgment. In his lands, where respect for a sheikh's figure was almost sacred, no one dared to question his choices aloud. Still, he knew what they said behind his back, and he knew Linda heard it too. During a private dinner on one of the palace's balconies, she confessed, "Sometimes I feel like I'm losing my identity, that everything I am, everything I've studied, what I've lived, has become nothing. People see me as a gold digger, that's all." Hassan remained silent for a few seconds. Then he replied with a serenity that was almost disconcerting. "The world will always judge what it doesn't understand, and unfortunately, it understands very little about love." She wanted to believe him. She really did. But the doubt, no matter how much she tried to push it to the back of her mind, sometimes returned. Did he truly love her? Or was her youth just a refreshment for the loneliness of a man accustomed to having everything? The age difference between them was a constant shadow. At public events, people whispered. On trips, photographers recorded every step as if it were part of a bizarre soap opera. And worst of all, journalists began to investigate her past, digging through ex-boyfriends, college grades, even old social media comments. Even trying to shield the relationship, the external pressure began to weigh. One night, after a gala event, Linda exploded. "I can't stand being seen as an object anymore, as if I were just a trophy by your side. I'm a person, Hassan." He looked at her with sadness. Not anger, nor coldness. Just a weariness in the eyes of someone who has seen many judgments and few truths. "And do you think I see you that way?" She remained silent. "Do you think I, with everything I've lived, with everything I could have within my reach, would choose someone empty by my side?" That question echoed in her mind for days. He had never promised her the world. He had never used money as an argument. In fact, she was the one who always felt out of place in that universe of luxury. But by his side, there was something different. A gaze that listened to her, a touch that didn't demand, a silence that embraced. Still, public opinion didn't leave the couple in peace. Rumors began to surface that the wedding would be canceled, that Linda had signed a millionaire confidentiality agreement, that she would have to give up her citizenship, her name, her freedom. Every day, a new theory circulated on social media. But what no one knew was that, behind it all, what hurt Linda the most were not the accusations. It was the doubt she carried in silence. Deep down, wasn't she also deceiving herself? Could true love exist amidst so many interests, privileges, and suspicions? She herself wasn't sure. She only knew one thing: time would tell. And that revelation would begin, surprisingly, on the night they would finally be alone as husband and wife. And when that moment arrived, it was nothing she, or anyone, imagined. Luxurious preparations, the $1,000,000 wedding. The proposal had been accepted. Doubts, though persistent, were dormant, and the wedding now was an imminent reality. Sheikh Hassan wanted everything to be perfect, not for ostentation, but because, according to him, Linda deserved to be treated like a queen. And that was exactly how she came to be seen. In a short time, renowned designers from all over the world began sending exclusive sketches. The chosen dress? A handmade model, embroidered with rare pearls and gold threads. It alone cost the equivalent of 3 luxury apartments. But curiously, that wasn't what enchanted Linda. It was the detail Hassan had personally requested. A small heart discreetly embroidered on the veil, a symbol of the first note he had written to her. The wedding would take place in Abu Dhabi, inside a palace where few had access. Helicopters would transport the most distant guests. Celebrities, businessmen, and members of royalty had confirmed their presence. Some for political interest, others out of simple curiosity, and some, of course, just to see up close the 21-year-old girl who dared to say yes to an 80-year-old man. Linda's family, still in shock, was received with every care. Her mother, even with a heavy heart, couldn't hide her dazzlement at the luxury around them. Her father, more reserved, walked through the rooms with an expression of someone still waiting to wake up from that dream, or nightmare, he still wasn't sure. Hassan made sure to reserve an entire wing of the palace for the Brazilian guests. There were interpreters, adapted menus, meticulously chosen ambient music. Every detail was supervised by a team of over 100 people. And yet, everything seemed light, as if it had been prepared with affection, not just with money. International media, on the other hand, was in a frenzy. Satellites parked in the sky, drones flying over the property, paparazzi hidden even in rented luxury cars. Headlines popped up everywhere in the world. Wedding of the century, the beauty and the chic. Young Brazilian signs lifetime contract with Arab fortune. There was curiosity, but also a lot of judgment. Linda herself, while trying on her final dress in front of the mirror, couldn't contain the internal questions. Was she happy? Yes, but she was also scared. Everything was too grand, too fast. She was still the same girl who had coffee at the corner bakery. But now, around her, there were jewels, security guards, and a wedding with a cinematic budget. The day before the ceremony, Hassan asked to see her alone. He took her to a secret garden inside the palace, where imported flowers from different parts of the world grew. In the center, a table set with simplicity, like in their first encounters. "I know the whole world is watching," he said, his voice calm, "but what matters to me is only what is here, now. You, just as you are. Without makeup, without a dress, without gold." Linda didn't answer immediately. She just held his hand, in silence. It was at that moment that she realized the wedding might cost millions, the veil might sparkle, the palace might seem magical, but what sustained her there wasn't the luxury. It was the way he made her feel, human, respected, chosen. The next day she walked down the aisle with a heavy heart, but firm. Perhaps the world would never understand that love, but she no longer needed approval. She only needed to live what was about to begin. Little did she know that when the lights went out and the guests left, the wedding night would reveal a closely guarded secret. Curious glances and whispers on the big day. The sun rose punctually that day, as if the sky itself knew the importance of the moment. It was the wedding day, one of the most talked about events of the year, not because of the luxury, which was evident, but because of the controversies surrounding the couple. She, young, discreet, of humble origin; he, powerful, influential, decades older, and shrouded in mystery. Outside the palace, the gates were closed, but the buzz was intense. Inside, everything seemed meticulously orchestrated. Soft scents of exotic flowers perfumed the corridors. Musicians rehearsed discreetly. Servants communicated in whispers, and between one arrangement and another, whispers emerged like snakes hissing through the golden cracks. "She's beautiful, but does she know what she's getting herself into? They say the Sheikh has had 4 wives. None of them stayed. I bet she'll disappear after the honeymoon." The comments came from all sides. Guests, staff, even some diplomats murmured discreetly. It was as if everyone expected something to happen, a scandal, an escape, a last-minute revelation. Linda, in her room, was a mix of emotions. Dressed in layers of silk with her hair adorned with a diamond-studded tiara, she looked like a fairy tale princess. But inside, her heart beat with unsettling force. It wasn't fear of the marriage itself, it was the weight of being judged by everyone present, and also by those who would watch later, through screens. On the other side of the palace, Hassan prepared in silence. Surrounded by advisors and traditions, he remained calm. But his eyes didn't deny his weariness. Weariness of always being a target of suspicion, even with all his history. But there was something in Linda that restored his zest for life. And that's why he was there, ready to start anew. The ceremony was marked by powerful cultural symbols, from traditional fabrics to words spoken in different languages, like a bridge between two worlds trying to understand each other. Linda entered to the sound of oriental instruments, walking with elegance, even as her legs trembled. The hall was packed, but the silence was absolute. Everyone watched. Some with enchantment, others with judgment, many with pure curiosity. This girl is brave, or too ambitious, perhaps just innocent.
When she approached Hassan, he extended his hand gently. His eyes said more than any speech, and she, upon touching him, seemed to forget, for a brief second, all the voices around them. It was as if at that instant the whole world was suspended. The officiant's words sealed the union, a light kiss on the back of her hand, an almost shy smile. The ceremony was over. But the whispers, not. No kiss? How strange. Did you see how distant he seemed? Is it just for show? But what no one knew was that there was a silent pact there, a promise of respect, of time, of mutual care. Love, if it existed, was still being built. It didn't need an audience. During the reception, the gazes continued. Between toasts and refined dishes, disguised questions invaded conversations. How did you two meet again? Where will you live now, Linda? And children, have you thought about them? She answered politely, but inside, she already wished the party would end. The hardest part wasn't the wedding, it was the constant judgment. When the fireworks announced the end of the celebration, Linda took a deep breath. The night had arrived. The night everyone was talking about. The night she feared, and that would change everything. The wedding night, the beginning of the mystery. The palace was silent. After hours of celebration, speeches, traditional dances, and a fireworks display that lit up the desert, only the distant echoes of the last guest's footsteps remained. The lights were dimming, one by one, and the air felt denser, heavier. It was as if all that luxury now disappeared in favor of something more intimate and frightening. Linda walked slowly down one of the long corridors, accompanied by two women tasked with leading her to the bridal suite. They were silent. They didn't exchange glances. And no matter how perfectly everything was decorated, lit candles, scattered rose petals, soft essences in the air, there was something about that moment that felt strange, almost out of place. Upon reaching the door, one of the women stopped her. "From here, madam, you enter alone." Linda nodded, though her mind screamed for answers. She took a deep breath, adjusted her veil, and slowly turned the doorknob. The bridal suite was immense, tastefully furnished, subtly lit without exaggeration. On the bed, pure linen sheets, On the walls, ancient tapestries. Everything seemed to have been delicately planned. But there was one detail that caught her attention. Hassan wasn't there.
She walked to the window, opened the curtain, and found herself facing the desert at night. A sea of dark sand under a star-filled sky. Absolute silence. The only thing she heard was the sound of her own breath. Minutes later, the door opened. Hassan entered calmly, dressed in traditional attire. His eyes were more tired than usual, but there was tenderness there. He approached her gently, as he always did. He lightly touched her hand. "Are you all right, my dear?" Linda nodded, but her heart was racing. It wasn't fear of him, it was fear of what would come next. Fear of expectations, of judgment, of what everyone expected to happen that night. But Hassan seemed to read her thoughts. "I know what everyone is expecting," he said, with a half-smile. "But don't worry, this night is yours too, and I just want you to feel safe." She sat beside him, both in silence for a few moments. Then he picked up a small wooden box and handed it to her. "It's a gift, an ancient tradition of my family, something we offer to the woman we choose as a true partner." Opening the box, Linda found a simple necklace, a sapphire stone attached to a discreet gold thread. It wasn't extravagant, but something in her felt that this object held more value than any other jewel she had seen. "This stone belonged to my mother," he explained. "She once told me that love cannot be imposed, that love is built, with time, silence, and presence. Today I offer you this." Linda's eyes filled with tears. For the first time on that journey, she didn't feel she needed to prove anything. Not to others, not to him, not to herself. That night, they did not consummate the marriage. Instead, they talked until dawn. He told stories of his youth. She spoke of her fears. They shared silences, laughed softly, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. But what seemed to be a gesture of tenderness hid something deeper, because that decision, not to follow the expected ritual, was not just an act of respect. It was the beginning of a secret closely guarded by Hassan, a secret Linda would only discover days later, and that would completely change the course of the story. The secret revealed, behind the curtains. The days that followed the wedding were shrouded in an almost heavy silence. The palace's luxury continued, the parties had ended, but something lingered in the air, a secret that even Linda couldn't fully decipher. Hassan seemed more reserved, distant at times, as if carrying a burden he couldn't share. She tried several times to bring up the subject, to ask if something was wrong, if he needed help, but he would respond with a tired smile and a phrase that became almost a mantra. "Everything is under control, my dear. Trust me." But trust for Linda required proof, and she felt there was much more behind that unexpectedly silent wedding night. It was then that one afternoon, while exploring one of the less visited corridors of the palace, she found a door ajar. Curious, she approached slowly and peeked at what was on the other side. It was a small room, lit by a single narrow window that let in the light of the setting sun. On a table, scattered papers, documents written in ancient Arabic, maps and black and white photographs. In the center, a framed portrait showed a serious man with deep eyes, very much like Hassan, but younger. Suddenly, footsteps behind her made Linda turn around. It was one of the Sheikh's advisors who stared at her with an indecipherable expression. "This area is not permitted for visitors," he said, in a firm but not rude tone. She tried to hide her curiosity but couldn't avoid the question, "What is all this?" He hesitated, then murmured, "Secrets of the Al-Masri family, things few know, and even fewer can speak of." Linda felt a chill down her spine. This was just a piece of the puzzle that had yet to be assembled. Later that night, Hassan called her to talk in the garden. Under the starry sky, he finally decided to open up about what had been kept for so long. "Linda, there's something you need to know," he began, his voice low and firm. "My family carries a responsibility that goes far beyond what the world sees. I am not just a businessman or any sheikh. I am the guardian of an ancient legacy, a protection that involves much more than riches." She listened in silence, trying to assimilate every word. "For decades, my family has kept a secret that, if revealed, could endanger everything and everyone we love. And that includes you," he said, looking directly into her eyes. Linda felt the weight of that confession. What did it mean? Was she truly prepared to live in that world where luxury concealed invisible dangers? "That's why I was careful on the night we got married. It wasn't for lack of desire or respect. It was to protect you," Hassan explained. "What you saw was just the surface. There are forces, people, interests that cannot know about our union before the right moment." Linda's mind swirled with questions, but Hassan asked for patience. "Gradually, you will understand everything. For now, trust me. Our marriage is not just between two people. It is between histories, responsibilities, and a future that depends on silence and care." She didn't know if she fully believed him, but she had nowhere to run. What awaited her, she thought, might be more complex than she had ever imagined. That night, they sat together in silence, sharing not just the space, but also a mystery that only time would reveal. The wedding that seemed like a fairy tale actually had a much deeper plot, and Linda knew that, from then on, her life would never be the same. The decision no one expected. After days immersed in that heavy secret, Linda felt the world spin differently. She was no longer just a young woman in love or a bride amidst a luxurious wedding. She was now part of something bigger, a mystery, a responsibility, a game of trust that surpassed any romance. But what surprised everyone, perhaps even herself, was the decision she made. One clear morning, as the sun rose on the horizon and the palace still slept, Linda asked to speak with Hassan. Alone, sitting in a silent garden, she looked into his eyes and spoke firmly. "Hassan, I want to stay, not because of the money, nor the title, nor the fame. I want to stay because I believe in you, because I feel there's something real between us," she said, gently holding his hands. He remained silent, surprised by the courage of that young woman who, despite everything, had decided to bet on the unknown. "But," she continued, "I also want you to know that I won't get lost on this path. I want to be a partner, not a shadow. I want us to be true, even if that means facing the world." Hassan looked at her for a long moment and finally smiled. "Linda, you are stronger than you imagine, and that is the only decision that matters to me." News of that conversation, which was meant to be a private moment, began to leak among the palace staff, and as expected, it caused a stir. People who had bet on the quick end of the union began to question if they had underestimated Linda. That girl, who seemed fragile and lost, was proving to be a woman with a will to stay, to fight. But her decision also brought new tensions. After all, the secret Hassan kept couldn't remain hidden forever. There were powerful forces interested in that ancient legacy, and Linda's presence now increased the risk. Some advisors even urged Hassan to reconsider. "She's not ready for this world," they said. "It's better to protect her, to keep her away." But he resisted. "It's by her side that I want to continue," he repeated. "Together, with truth and courage." Linda knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be judgments, challenges, and even threats, but she was willing to face everything. Behind the beauty of the ceremonies and the expensive clothes, there was a whirlwind of emotions, fear of the unknown, hope for a better future, and an immense desire to prove that her love was not just a tale of interests. Some nights, as the city outside slept, she wondered if she would have the strength to continue. If it weren't for his gaze, so full of confidence and respect, perhaps she would have given up. But that commitment of hers to herself and to Hassan gave meaning to everything. It was more than a marriage. It was the beginning of a partnership that would defy expectations and break barriers. And, while the world talked, judged, and waited, Linda prepared for the moment when the whole truth would be revealed, a moment that would forever change the course of that story. She didn't know what was coming, but she was ready to face it. "Claro, Aqui estão as traduções das últimas partes do seu roteiro. The truth comes out. The world discovers everything. For months, the carefully maintained silence in the palace began to break. Small details, furtive conversations, and signs that could no longer be ignored accumulated until the truth, or at least part of it, came to light. It all started with a leak. An investigative journalist, always attentive to rumors in circles of power, managed to obtain exclusive information about the marriage and the true motivations behind it. What was supposed to be a well-kept secret exploded into headlines that swept the world like a hurricane. The public, previously divided between skepticism and curiosity, was faced with facts that completely changed the story. They discovered that Hassan was not just a billionaire sheikh, but the guardian of an ancient cultural legacy involving traditions, family secrets, and responsibilities that went far beyond imagination. And Linda, the young Brazilian woman, was not just a bride of convenience, but a key piece in this delicate plot. Suddenly, social media was flooded with intense debates. Some expressed admiration for her courage, others disbelief. Stories and theories multiplied, while experts in Middle Eastern politics and Arab culture tried to explain what it all truly meant.
But the strongest impact was on Linda and Hassan's lives. Suddenly, the gazes were no longer just curious, they became invasive. Reporters tried to invade the couple's privacy, international media outlets wanted exclusives, and even close acquaintances began to distance themselves, fearing involvement in something bigger than they imagined. Linda, who had faced judgment before, felt the weight of a new battle. Now, it wasn't just her reputation at stake, but both their safety and future. In the midst of this chaos, Hassan stood firm by her side. In public, always smiling and protective, hiding the concerns that only those closest perceived. He knew that the marriage was just the beginning of a much larger struggle, involving both power and the heart. In an unexpected press conference, Hassan decided to speak. With a calm but determined voice, he explained the importance of the legacy they protected and thanked everyone for their patience and support. "My wife, Linda, is an incredible woman whom I chose not out of self-interest, but for her strength, intelligence, and heart. She is a fundamental part of this path we have ahead," he stated. It was a decisive moment. Many saw in him the sincerity of a man accustomed to hiding his feelings, and the true love that had blossomed in that unusual union. Linda, in turn, decided to take a stand on social media. In a simple but powerful message, she thanked the support, asked for respect, and spoke about the importance of trusting in time and truth. "Not everything that appears is," she wrote, "and sometimes love needs courage to overcome prejudice." Despite the criticisms that still existed, this was a turning point. The world began to see their story not just as a scandal, but as a journey of discovery, challenges, and above all, humanity. But what seemed like a happy ending still held surprises, because when the truth is revealed, it also opens doors to new mysteries. And Linda, more than ever, knew that her life would never be ordinary, that she was about to face the greatest and most unexpected challenge of her young existence. And the ending that left everyone speechless. After months living in the spotlight, facing judgments, revelations, and secrets, the moment no one expected arrived. An ending that didn't fit into theories or prejudices, but that literally left the whole world speechless. Linda and Hassan were more united than ever. The marriage, which seemed an improbable union, had transformed into a solid alliance, forged in patience, trust, and a love that grew in the subtle nuances of difficulties. But behind this apparent calm, one last surprise awaited to be revealed. something that would forever change the narrative everyone thought they knew. In an intimate press conference, surrounded by a few chosen people, Hassan made an unexpected announcement. With a firm voice and serene gaze, he revealed that although the age difference was great, his commitment was not only to Linda, but to a common future, a legacy that now belonged to both of them. "Linda is not just my wife. She is my partner, my heir," he said. "We decided together that our marriage is not a cold agreement of interests, but the beginning of a new story, where we respect the past, but build the future side by side." What surprised everyone was what followed. Linda announced that she was expecting a child. Yes, an heir who would further unite those two very distinct lives. The world, which had followed everything with suspicious eyes, was now silenced by the power of that news. The young Brazilian woman and the ancient sheikh showed that when there is true respect and love, nothing is impossible. But there was more. Linda also revealed that, from the beginning, she had chosen that path not to get lost, but to find herself. That with every challenge faced, she discovered more about herself, her strength, her courage, and her ability to love beyond appearances. And Hassan, with visible pride, declared that her presence in his life had renewed not only his heart, but also his hope, that together they would be able to overcome any obstacle, from the most mundane to the most complex. The headlines changed their tone. What was a scandal became an example, a story of overcoming, courage, and love that crossed cultural, social, and emotional borders. That day, no one doubted the sincerity of that union anymore. And, for the first time, everyone felt something that words could not explain: the simple and powerful truth that love knows no barriers. Linda, the 21-year-old who faced the world to follow her heart, and Hassan, the 80-year-old sheikh who found in her simplicity a new reason to live, wrote a chapter together that will forever remain in history. And so, what seemed like an improbable tale became a true lesson: that the impossible only exists for those who lack the courage to try. This story shows us that sometimes love blossoms where you least expect it. That differences in age, culture, or social status mean nothing when two souls truly connect. And that following your heart, even amidst judgment and doubt, can lead to an ending no one imagined, but one everyone deserves to feel. If this story touched you in any way, leave a like, share it with someone who believes in the power of true love, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our next emotional stories. See you next time, and remember, sometimes the greatest courage is simply to love.